All right, everyone, welcome in and welcome back to the Full Court Trap podcast coming at you here Thursday evening recording. You'll be watching this on a Friday most likely, but me and my main man Blake Smith are gearing up for another loaded weekend of college hoops. When Saturday comes, Blake Smith, the calendar will turn to March, and I am ecstatic for that. I don't know about you, but I've been waiting on this for God ever since November when the season started.
Yeah, I got chills, man. I can't wait till March. Next week is the start of conference tourneys too, so it's coming quick.
Yeah. This Sunday in the A-Sun, it's all getting started off. That's the first one kicking off on Sunday with the opening rounds. I'll be tuned into that one. But before that one, we've got yet another loaded weekend to discuss, as is the norm in college basketball around this time of year. So we'll start it off over in the SEC, which is a commonplace that this podcast has found themselves discussing this year. The most loaded conference in the country has some star-studded matchups again, and we'll start with the one taking place in Rupp Arena. I will be in attendance for that one. The number one team in all the land, the Auburn Tigers, they're coming to Rupp Arena to take on Kentucky, who just escaped Oklahoma last night in a thrilling game. That was a great college basketball game overall. Lamont Butler and Jackson Robinson both played last night. Lamont more so than Jackson. Jackson remained in a limited capacity for Mark Pope. No notable injuries for the Auburn squad, at least not as of this recording. Injury reports will become available tomorrow. But Blake, I mean, this is a battle of two really high-powered offenses. Auburn, they've got the upper hand in the defensive metrics, but Kentucky, they've really dug in lately on the defensive side of the ball. I saw a stat that they were maybe, I think it was 11th over the course of their last couple games in terms of defensive efficiency, which has been a big question mark for this team overall. And they're showing signs of improvement. Getting Lamont back will help. Hopefully having Jackson to provide some scoring will help as well. But this Auburn train, I mean, there's only been two teams in the country to slow it down so far, that being the Florida Gators and the Duke Blue Devils, who are both teams that Kentucky has beaten, I will add. So this is a very compelling matchup inside Rupp Arena, and I'm excited to be there for it. What are you expecting in this matchup? I know that this one's going to have the eyes of all the nation being on ABC. That's a new thing for college basketball. We usually don't see that. ABC at 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, that's kind of weird having it on ABC. You would have thought it'd be like on CBS like it was a couple years ago, but man, I wish I could be at this game. It has potential to be like a top 5 game in the entire regular season just because of how high-powered these offenses are. And then you got a team that's trending defensively right now, with that being Kentucky. And then you got a team that's been dominant on the defensive end all year, with that being Auburn, who's coming off a manhandle game against Ole Miss, where they literally put belt to ass in a 106-76 win. And Ole Miss is a March Madness team too. Like, they're going to be probably anywhere between a 4 to 6 seed. Like, this is a good team. So, like, with Auburn coming into or hosting Ole Miss and doing that to a really quality team, it's kind of mind-blowing, to put it easy. So I do think this game has potential to be a heavyweight match. Like, it's going to be blow for blow all night long. If Jackson Robinson isn't healthy, which, I mean, we didn't see him, I don't think, at all in that second half against Oklahoma last night. I guess he was icing his wrist, but that's not a good sign at all going into this game against the best team in college basketball. And then you add in Lamont Butler probably not being at 100%. There was times he didn't look quite like himself. I mean, he still had a quality game before he got fouled out, but he just didn't look totally the same. I don't think he'll look the same the rest of the season. Who else? Otega Owe looked unbelievable last night. Had 28 points, 16 straight. So this is going to be an insanely good game. I said it before. I'll say it again. I wish I could be there. You're lucky that you got that chance, Luke, to be there for that.
Yes, sir.
It's just going to be a heck of a game. I'll be tuned in for sure. I get off of work at 1, so I'll be right there watching on my TV screen.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a big one. You mentioned Auburn, their absolute dismantling of Ole Miss. My unofficial metric sponsor of the Full Court Trap podcast, Evan Maya. I looked at the rate for that game. Auburn came in at a 140.3 for offensive efficiency in that game against Ole Miss. To put it in simple terms, that's very good. So
Yeah,
Auburn, they're coming off a great performance. That's just become the norm with this group. I mean, we were talking about how in the Georgia and Arkansas games of lately they look kind of sloppy, and I mean they've responded to those claims and really
they
haven't
put that
missed a
narrative
beat.
to sleep really
Yeah,
quick.
yeah, I mean, we floated the narrative out there like, hey, are they kind of stalling or maybe cruising through SEC at this
Yeah.
point? But no, they're not cruising. Bruce must have gotten them woke up after those underwhelming games. But this one on the Kentucky side of things, it's just really hard to make a complete preview of it because this team, I mean, it's always just injuries with them. Lamont Butler, yeah, I think if I had to bet where we stand right now, this is pre-injury reports being released, anything like that. Just based off what I saw last night, I think Lamont will probably be good to go. Jackson Robinson, though, I don't know. They pulled him early in the second half, and he didn't come back. He was icing his wrist, like you said, that whole second half. So Pope, he had a quote about it. It said something like his wrist didn't make good progress in that game or it didn't respond well. So not the most encouraging thing you want to hear. It was really scary there for a minute. Amari Williams went down grabbing his foot, but I think that ended up being nothing after all. But when it comes to just the game itself and the matchup, I feel like this favors Auburn solely because Auburn's just been on another tier of elite compared to every other team in the country so far. But I will point out that Auburn has not gone into Rupp Arena and won a game since Eddie Sutton was the coach back in
Wasn't it
1988.
88? Yeah.
Yep, 1988. They went in and beat Kentucky, but ever since then, I mean, Rupp Arena has been a palace of nightmares for Auburn. Bruce hasn't been able to crack the code yet, but Blake, this feels like it's going to be his best chance to get it done. If this isn't the year of the man, I don't know when it will be.
Yeah, you said it best. Like, this is the best year, the best opportunity they have to overcome that stomp of not winning at Rupp Arena in like over 25 years or something ridiculous. Over like 35, actually. Like, that's a pretty asinine number to really think about because they go to Rupp a decent amount, like at least once every year. So, that is insane. I do think this is the best opportunity they have. Uh, I I do think they pull this one off, but just hear me out here. Walk with me, Luke. I do think out of these last three games for Auburn, I think Kentucky might have the I want to say best opportunity to take over Auburn here, just because of the external factors. With that being Auburn not winning at Rupp since '88. Kentucky's defense trending in the right direction. You got Lamont Butler back, who, I mean, when he's healthy, he's one of the best defensive guards in college basketball. One of the more fun guards to watch right now in college basketball, actually. You got Otega Owe whenever he's on and like he's like got tunnel vision, then you're not stopping him. Amari Williams, even though he got hurt, stayed in the game and he's looking like one of the better bigs in the SEC. And this team overall has just been super high powered all year long. I mean, they're fourth in the nation for points per game right now. Florida, the team that is one of the two teams that took down Auburn earlier this season, Kentucky favors that Florida team, and Florida is not a very good defensive team. So, I mean, just hear me out. I do think Kentucky can pull it off. I'm sticking with Auburn pick right now, but I do think Kentucky has a really, really good chance at getting this.
I would be walking with you if things weren't so uncertain on the Jackson Robinson side of things. I
Yeah.
just feel like if he doesn't give it a go, I think that really just puts a halt on what Kentucky wants to do. Now, you could have a situation where Kobe Bryant steps up like he did in the Tennessee game and just goes wild, or like that Florida game where he was making everything.
He's a home game merchant, like respectfully.
Yeah.
Like that's when he shines the most.
Oh, as soon
So,
as he steps into Rupp Arena, he ups his game on another level,
hmm
and on neutral courts as well, he's pretty decent. But
yeah,
I just look at these two teams, the eye test. Auburn's really obviously passed that the whole year, and then even on paper, I mean, when you've got a 6 man, if you're Bruce Pearl, like Tahad Pettiford, to back up those guards, and then on the other side of things, you got Travis Perry coming off the bench for Kentucky, and you got guys like Chaney Johnson that are able to come in and really be serviceable, whereas Kentucky's got a Brandon Garrison who's really inconsistent, but shown flashes. He had probably the best game of his Kentucky career last night.
yeah,
It just feels like there's going to be too much for Kentucky to overcome. Being at home obviously does help them a lot. If I had to pick a game down the stretch where I think Auburn's most likely to get picked off, I said it a couple episodes back. I've got to go with either A&M or Alabama. That I think those are their biggest challenges. Kentucky's going to be a challenge. I don't think it's going to be quite on the level of that one, though. I could be wrong. I mean, I would like to think that this game's going to be close, but it kind of has the feel of a game where Kentucky's in it for a little bit, but then Auburn just kind of flexes his muscles and pulls away, maybe gets like a 10-point win or so. But we'll see. It's going to be really intriguing to see how Amari Williams, we've talked about his improvement, how he's going to be able to handle Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell as well, going at it with Andrew Carr, Chad Baker Mazzara versus Otega Oweh. It's going to be a very interesting matchup all across the board. Miles
yeah.
Kelly and Denver Jones going up against Lamont and hopefully Jackson Robinson. But we'll see. It's going to be a heavyweight battle for sure. All the external factors when it comes to Auburn playing in that building, it points towards Kentucky. But this obviously isn't your granddad's Auburn team. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. I think that Auburn gets it done here. But, I mean, no shame if you're Kentucky if you go out and drop this one. I mean, very few teams have cracked the Auburn code so far this year. But
hmm
in another SEC battle that's going on this weekend, probably what I think is honestly the best game of the whole weekend slate. Alabama, they're going to Rocky Top, number 6 versus number 5. Blake, this is probably, when you look at the schedule top to bottom, the best game of the weekend. Like I said, Alabama, they've been on a little bit of a hot streak lately. They're starting to find themselves and find a groove. That defense continues to be a question, and you've got the kind of counter to their style that they like to play, where
hmm
Tennessee's got this high-powered defense that really just hounds you and pressures you and gets you out of your rhythm. And the offense may not always be there, but I mean, if Chaz plays like we expect him to, that offense can get going. It really opens things up, like we mentioned in the past. Really conflicting styles going on here in this battle over at Rocky Top.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a really interesting game. Like you said, the styles really contradict each other. But if you're a Tennessee fan, you got to hope that you control the pace and tempo of this game. Alabama, their defense has been really shaky, really all season long, and it's been like even more like of a red flag recently with how kind of piss poor their effort has been on that side of the floor. In Tennessee, they're a pretty hot team right now with their only recent loss being Kentucky, twice actually, and then you add in the Auburn game. But I mean that's a little down the road. They beat Florida, beat Missouri. Both those games were at Rocky Top. They went on the road, blew out Oklahoma, lost to Kentucky, like I said, uh, lost to Vanderbilt, March Madness team. They just went on the road at A&M and won by almost 10. Then you add in the LSU game. That was a really nightmare of a game, I felt like, but they still pulled it off. But yeah, these styles definitely contradict each other. Uh, if you're a Tennessee enthusiast, you got to hope that Zakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier, the kryptonites in this game, because Mark Sears, and who else? Aiden Holloway.
Hey, in the hallway.
They're both going to be dynamic scorers, so you're going to have to lock in on the defensive end. And this Alabama team is like one of the hottest teams on the offensive end this year. They're actually leading the nation in points per game, with that being 91 and a half points a game. Just a crazy statistic. I do think Bama pulls this one off just because of how electric their offense is. And they've been really trending upwards. Their defense, I mean, sure, it's a really big question, but when your team's scoring like 100 plus against legit teams, I don't think there's much for you to be worrying about because like this offense is just electric, top to bottom. When you got guys like Chris Youngblood, Aiden Holloway, Mark Sears, guys like that, able to knock down shots in big time moments and like consistently, efficiently, like I think you got this one. Like you're in good hands.
It's a compelling matchup for sure. Just the way these teams kind of just oppose each other in terms of a style. It's a immovable force, an unstoppable object is whatever analogy you want to use for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be really interested to see how Zakai can kind of handle Mark Sears. This is going to be a big test for him. He's going to have to step up in this moment. He's obviously very efficient defensive wise, and we know what he's capable of. I lean towards Alabama as well because I just think they've got more playmakers on the court at any given time that can get buckets. Whereas Tennessee, it kind of feels like they're really kind of the Chaz Lanier show. And then if he can get things rolling, then it kind of opens up things for everybody else. But if Chaz isn't working out and they're trying to force it to Ziegler or getting Milicic the ball, yeah, it's going to be rough. Gainey, all those guys. But this team – it just feels like they're going to kind of go where Chaz takes them just because of how dynamic of a scorer he can be. And like I said, he just opens things up so much for them. And Alabama, too, they just absolutely mollywop Mississippi State on Tuesday. Probably had their best defensive performance of conference play so far, holding Mississippi State to 73. Josh Hubbard and all those guys, and Mississippi State really just couldn't get anything going. That was a very, very impressive performance all around because Mississippi State, they've kind of been trending in the wrong way as of recently, but that's still a good team. I'm going to be interested to see how this one pans out. I just think that Alabama's got too much. Chris Youngblood, LeBaron Philon, Aiden Holloway, Mark Sears. When those are your go-to guards, I mean, that's just absolutely beautiful as compared to...
Such a dynamic guard room.
And no disrespect to Tennessee. I mean, Ziegler obviously is a stud. Chaz is a stud. But then it's Jordan Gainey and Jemai Meshack. I mean,
they're not super consistent. Like they're good role players. Like they fit their like the team's needs. But Jordan Gainey tends to be semi inefficient. And then Jemai Meshack, offensively, he's practically a cone. Like, no disrespect to him, but he's just not the greatest on the offensive end. He's a hell of a defender, though, like one of the top, like, premier defenders in the game of college basketball.
I do think Tennessee might have the edge in the front court, though. I mean, Clifford Omarui, he's not bad at all, but he hasn't really made the impact that most expected him to. I think Felix Okpara might be able to take advantage of that matchup in the paint. And really, Igor Milicic.
Okpara has.
Yeah, and Igor Milicic, honestly, Grant Nelson, he hasn't been bad by any means, but he also hasn't really blown you away as of lately and just really all season long. Like, we saw what he was capable of at his best last year in the tournament. I feel like he hasn't really hit that peak just yet. And Igor Milicic, on the other hand, he's really been a solid piece for Rick Barnes and what Tennessee's wanted to do all season long. But you factor in just Alabama's just abundance of talent at all levels, and also Nate Oates. I mean, when it comes to Nate Oates versus Rick Barnes, no disrespect to Rick Barnes, I think Nate Oates is far superior in the coaching category, at least where things stand as of right now. I feel like this is going to be – it's really hard to get a grip on it because I feel like Tennessee might be able, with that home court advantage, to get this game kind of played at the pace and style they want to, where they just slow it down and kind of try to throw things out of whack for Alabama. But I also don't think that Alabama is just going to let that happen. And it just feels like their offense is too good to let anybody else dictate the pace. So I could see this being a shootout where Alabama wins by like 6-8. I think that Tennessee might be able to keep up with them. But if they do get lost in the pace of the game that Alabama tries to run, it could get ugly. So we'll see what happens there. Moving on throughout the SEC, Texas A&M. they've lost 3 straight now, Blake. Things aren't looking good for the Aggies. And man, I mean, talk about not having any tune-up games to try and get things right. Going into Florida, the number 3 team in the country, that is obviously going to be playing very angry after they just took that L to Georgia, where they came all the way back from down 20 plus and let it go there at the end. This one, I don't want to go out and say that Texas A&M might get blown out, but honestly, that's kind of the way I'm leaning, because you are running into a Florida team that's dynamic offensively, just had one of their more poor performances of the year, and just with the way Todd Golden runs that program, I have a feeling those guys are going to be ready to come out and bite somebody's head off on Saturday.
Yeah, and they're a lot better at home, this Florida team. So, I mean, I do think this could get ugly just with Texas A&M's recent struggles. Buzz Williams, I don't know what he's been doing lately with that team, but losing 3 straight. Granted, it's a gauntlet right now, but that's a rough 3-game stretch. And then you add in the 3 games coming up with Florida, the one we're talking about, Auburn, and then LSU. Like, it doesn't get easier at all, like in the SEC this year. So this is definitely a game that Texas A&M is going to have to win. I don't know about have to win, but they need to win it, because if you're losing 3 games straight against March Madness teams, then you're kind of hurting yourself.
Yeah, seed-wise, they're kind of putting themselves in a bad spot just with the way that they've been trending lately. And, I mean, the losses, they haven't necessarily been to bad opponents. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
go to Mississippi State and you lose that one, nobody's going to hold that against you. But the way they lost, I mean, they got dominated from start to finish. A 16-point loss never really looks good. I mean, even if the opponent is quality, you don't want to go in and just get ran out of the gym. And then Tennessee came to their court in what felt like a really good opportunity for them to gain some ground in the SEC standings and to also propel their national seed kind of projection when it comes to the NCAA tournament. They whiffed on
They
that one, and they
sold
let
it. Yeah.
Chaz Lanier just go absolutely crazy. I mean, he
Yep.
had everything he wanted on that night. There was
8 threes on
nobody.
the night, 30
mm,
points. Like,
There was nobody that was going to slow him down on that night. But
can we
then
talk
they
about?
had.
I'm
Oh,
sorry
go
for
ahead.
cutting you off, but can we talk about that Vandy A&M game last night? Like, I
Oh, that
literally
you
had to sit
leading
there.
right into what I wanted to talk about.
I
Yeah.
was sitting there for 25 minutes waiting to see the Kentucky Oklahoma game, because I mean, it was a lot better of a game than this one, or the Vandy A&M one was. And sure enough, I'm just sitting there forever, and the game took forever.
Yeah, I think another call just went to the monitor to be reviewed while we were recording this over there in College Station. But yeah,
Damn here.
you led right into what I was going to say. That was the third of this losing streak they're going on, and they let Tyler Nickel go absolutely nuclear. This is back-to-back games now where they've let one guy just kind of kill them, really. And you could start to wonder if this team's the problems and the concerns that we had about them in the preseason, if they're starting to show, because that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting right now when it comes to Texas A&M.
Yeah, definitely.
And then it's just so hard, like I've said all season long, Wade Taylor just to buy into a squad that's going to be led by him, because you just never know what version of him you're going to get on any given night. Like if he's
Yeah.
clicking, he can lead you to just about anything. But if he's not clicking, I mean, you just see the results that have occurred in this little losing stretch, because he hasn't really been great by any means.
No, this is definitely a get right game for A&M. Do I think they win it? Probably not, but I mean, there's definitely still a strong chance to win this one, because like Wade Taylor, he shot semi inefficiently lately, but he's still putting up a decent amount of points. Had 21 against Vandy, 18 against Tennessee, 18 against Arkansas. So like he's not shooting it efficiently at all, but that's like been his biggest thing his entire college career. Like he's not an efficient shooter at all, but he's gonna have to let like Zerk Phelps, Pharrell Payne, uh, those other guys on that team to help step up and like help like with some contribution.
I said it the other day on Twitter. Wade Taylor's never seen a shot that he doesn't like, and I mean that is 100% true. But I just think that Florida's backcourt is just too good, and then they've got the dudes in the front court as well to just go band for band with A&M, and I think they're going to be able to get it done. But
Yeah,
this
their
is
backcourt is like 10 times better than A&M's, and that's not even a knock on those A&M guards because, I mean, Wade Taylor, he's a really fun player to watch. He's like a good player. And then Zurich Phelps has been really good all year. But yeah, this Florida front court definitely outweighs theirs. Like Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, and Will Richard. Like, are you kidding me? Those three guards, like, that's a super deep guard room.
Yeah, that's one of the deepest guard rooms in the country. I mean, we've talked about it at length. There won't be a better trio that you can find really anywhere when it comes to
Nah,
guards. And but you talked about Will Richard, man, he had 30 against Georgia.
he
That all
went
went to
nuclear.
waste. Yeah, he was the only guy that really showed up for them. Walter Clayton started to find his groove as a little bit as the game went on, but overall, it was just a bad performance from Florida. Dug themselves too big of a hole to climb out of, and it came back to bite them. But I think they're going to get right here. But if you're Texas A&M and Buzz Williams, you got to be putting an extra emphasis on the fact that they can't drop this one because 4 straight losses, turning the page to March, that is not good, Blake, to
Brutal,
say the
yeah.
least.
Like
No,
you,
yeah.
I mean, if you're like a Duke type of team, you kind of want to get a loss to like have some adversity, but you don't want to have like an A&M type of stretch where you're losing potentially 4 games in a row, and like that's just not a bad look going into March. I feel like, especially with the absolute David and Goliath of the SEC tournament coming up, like literally top to bottom. It's one of the deepest conference tournaments I've seen in probably my lifetime.
We're going to be eating good here in another week or so when Nashville starts in the SEC tournament action. I can't wait for
Sure.
that. But to round out the SEC talk this weekend, at least to a certain extent, we'll have some bubble teams we'll hit on at the end a little bit more briefly. But Missouri, they're traveling to Vandy, the Memorial Magic, Blake. It's lurking. It's ready to claim another top 15 victim here with the number 14 ranked Tigers coming into town. You think Vandy's going to get it done?
I mean, all year long, Memorial Magic has been a real thing, but I do think it dies down a little here. Missouri's offense has just been really good all season long. They're fourth in the SEC in points per game, sitting at 84.3 a game. And they're leading the league right now in field goal percentage, nearly 49% per game. And they're also the second highest 3-point percentage team, shooting 37 or 375 from the three, 37.5. So this is a really deep Missouri team, like I already said about a few other teams. But this Missouri team can kill you in like multiple ways. They can take you off the dribble. They can catch and shoot. Uh, they can get you on the defensive end. And then like Caleb Grill, Tamar Bates, those are some of the most dynamic guards in the entire conference. Caleb Grill, he might be a little older. Like he's, I think, 24, 25, but I mean, you can't knock his age or anything like that because this dude just killed the SEC all year long. He's one of my favorite players to watch right now in the conference. Tamar Bates, him leaving Indiana has probably been the best decision for him, and it's looking like it's panned out really, really well for him. He might have dodged a bullet. IU, they're sitting around the bubble talk, but I mean, you got Mike Woodson getting fired or stepping down, all of that controversy, blah blah blah. That's off topic though. But yeah, I do think Missouri pulls this one off. Uh, they need this game. I feel like a road win against a team that's going to be in the tournament. That can be said for really any SEC team at this moment. And I just feel like everything's pointing towards a Missouri win right now. And then they're getting back Trent Burns potentially. He's listed as questionable for this game, and he's been
Mm-hmm.
out all year long. He's like I think 7'2", 7'3" center. He's like a 4-star, 5-star, French 5-star in high school. So if they get him back, then I feel like this team. I don't know how much they'll play him though, just with how late into the season as rotations being set already. But if he gets some decent minutes, then I feel like this team just elevates a whole nother level.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated trying to work somebody into the fold when they've been missing all season long. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going against you here, Blake. Memorial Magic, it's claiming another victim on Saturday. The Missouri Tigers, they're going down. Nobody goes into Memorial and comes out alive unless you're Auburn or I'm trying to think of who else is taking Vandy down to the wire here. But yeah, I just think that Vandy, this is a win that they're already safely into the field. But I think this can lock them in, and I think that Mark Byington's going to have them bought in on the importance of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think that all signs point towards another Vandy win here. I mean, we've seen Kentucky go in there and go down. We've seen Tennessee go in there and go down. We've seen Ole Miss go in there and go down. It just seems like ranked opponents come into that gym and dreams just die there unless you're Mississippi State. They went in January and got things done. These teams also played in January, the second week, and
Yeah.
Missouri came out with a 9-point dub over in Columbia. I think there's going to be a little revenge factor here. Jason Edwards, Tyler Nickel, I'm expecting a big game from those two. They've been phenomenal all season long. Tyler Nickel just had an outstanding game against Texas A&M,
Mm-hmm.
like I mentioned. And then Devin McLaughlin, he's been consistent all season long. If you can get some production from the bench guys too, like MJ Collins and Jalen Carey, limit kind of Caleb Grill's ability to get hot, contain Tamar Bates and Mark Mitchell, I think you've got an upset cooking down there in Memorial. And we'll see if the Memorial Magic strikes again. I hope to see it because Vandy, they've been one of the better stories of college basketball so far this season. It's been really entertaining to watch them kind of grow and see the job that Mark Byington's been able to do with this program. So definitely going to be having eyes on that one, 6 o'clock on the SEC network. We'll move out of the SEC now and on to some of the other ranked teams that are in action this week. We've got Iowa State. They're hosting Arizona over in the Big 12 in a late night game, 9 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. Number 22 Arizona going into number 9 Iowa State. Blake, Iowa State has had some struggles recently. They just went down to Oklahoma State a few games ago, earlier in the week. That was a really puzzling loss, and they've got a chance here to drop 3 straight if they're not careful against this Arizona squad that they've had their ups and downs this year, but they've really found themselves in Big 12 play, worked themselves back into the top 25, and have found themselves in a favorable seeding territory. So if Iowa State's not careful here, this could be a tricky situation for them to navigate. I don't know if the health of their guys that have been missing has been updated recently. I think that could play a huge factor into who comes out in this game. But what do we think about this Big 12 battle going on?
Last time these teams faced earlier this season, it was an instant classic. You were asleep though for it. I don't know why I was
Yep,
up. It was like almost 3 a.m.
it
Caleb
was a late
Love,
one.
Caleb Love coming down the court. It just chucks up a 3/4 half quarter. Bang, goes to OT. Arizona wins. Do I think Caleb Love does good in this game? I think this is a game that he's going to probably try to do too much. Uh, I mean, it's not knocking the guy, but I mean, I just think with that factor of how good he played last time in the second half and then going into OT, I don't know if that's going to be replicated because this Iowa State team, they might be down a couple guys right now, but they're still a really really good team. The metrics like this team a lot too, and I do think that Keyshawn Gilbert he should be back Saturday, I
I
think,
think
or at
Curtis
least he's
Jones
close
should
to it.
be. Yeah, Curtis Jones should be playing as well. They both logged some minutes in the last game.
And if those guys are playing, then I definitely think Iowa State has the upper hand this game. I just, I don't know. I don't feel like Arizona can beat this team twice in 1 year. Uh, but I mean, crazier things have happened, and this Arizona team is still really, really good. That they have their inconsistencies here and there, but they're still a legit team.
Yeah, I just find it hard to see a team that's as good as Iowa State dropping 3 straight here.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I just feel like this team's too good to go on a roll of just bad play like that. Now, granted, they did go without Keshawn Gilbert and Curtis Jones in one of those games that they dropped. 10 hours ago, Otzelberger said that Keyshawn Gilbert practiced. So I think that he should be able to return on Saturday. But we'll see. They may want to play it safe with that Big 12 tournament play coming up soon. But if this Iowa State team's healthy, I think they're one of the Final Four contenders in the country. They could possibly even aspire for more. I just have been all over this team all season long. I like what they've got going on there. Milan Momcilovic anchoring it down in the post, and then they've got some of the more quality guards you can find with Curtis Jones and Keshawn Gilbert when they're healthy. Guys like Taman Lipsey and Joshua Jefferson, just the overall mold of that team, it's just so well put together. And Arizona, I don't know what to expect with them. If Caleb Love comes out and has a good performance, he could pull off a stunner easily.
Yeah.
But it's
hard to sustain that twice against the same team.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get with Caleb Love. Other guys like Jaden Bradley are going to have to step up. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's going to be hard as well because this is on the road. Road conference games, they're always a tough task, tall order. So I think Iowa State's going to get it done here. Keeping it in the Big 12. Texas Tech, they're traveling to Kansas, Blake. We kind of alluded to this matchup a little bit in the Kansas solo video earlier, so we won't spend too much time on it. But if Kansas wants to get things rolling in the right direction, they got to try and start here because they're bringing Texas Tech to their building, Allen Fieldhouse, on Saturday. Texas Tech, I believe that Chance McMillan, I'm not sure if there's been an update on him. He didn't play in the last game against Houston, so hopefully they can get him back because that's a key part to what Texas Tech tries to do. And even Kelvin Sampson said in the postgame there was kind of an asterisk next to that game that they won just because of Tech's health problems here. But do we think that Kansas is able to defend home court here and get the job done against a really good Texas Tech team, but one that's been dealing with some injury problems as well?
Honestly, I don't think they have it in them. Like, to put it pretty bluntly, this Kansas team's been trending in the wrong way. If you're a Rock Chalk fan, you got Bill Self publicly saying that basically talked to Oklahoma State last year. He didn't really hit it head on that he talked with them about the job, but why else are you talking to Oklahoma State, behind the scenes? And then you got him saying they need to be away from each other for a couple of days when you're literally a week from March. That just can't happen, especially from a elite Hall of Fame coach like Bill Self. It's been a failure, I feel like, since the early stretch of the season, and it's not going pretty there. You got the losses to Utah, the blowout loss to BYU, both those games on the road. You get a good bounce back win against a not very good Oklahoma State team, but they did blow them out, so kudos to them. They went on the road and beat Colorado by 7. That's not really a pleasing win if you're a Kansas fan, I feel like, because let's face it, Colorado sucks this year. And the same kind of can be said about Kansas at this point. And I just think this Texas Tech team is just too good. And especially if they are coming off of losses against Houston. They beat West Virginia, but then they lost to TCU. So I do think this is going to be a really hungry team. If McMillan's out, that could be a detrimental loss for this game. But I still think Texas Tech pulls this one off or what.
I did just pull up Chance McMillan and Darian Williams, according to Grant McCaslin, have not practiced this week, and he said today that he needs to see them practice Friday if they're going to have a chance to play against Kansas.
All right, I might take my prediction back at that point. Let's go Rock Chalk.
Yeah, with the injury problems, this just makes me want to pick Kansas because I feel like that's just detrimental to Texas Tech. When you lose a guy like McMillan who can score for you and get buckets, it's just tough to replace that. JT Toppin obviously is special. He can get things done. But losing a guy like that and then obviously losing Darian Williams as well, just kind of a lot to overcome, especially when you're going into one of college basketball's toughest venues in Allen Fieldhouse. And Kansas, for all the struggles that they have and all the issues that they have, They do have the talent to get things right, and we've mentioned that at length before. It hasn't all clicked yet. It may not click this season. This team may just never find their rhythm, but there's a chance there, and they could easily find a way to get things started right here. But lastly, in the Big 12, we got West Virginia going to BYU. This is a big one for West Virginia's bubble resume, Blake. I think, as of the last bracketology update, they're a part of the last four buys, if I remember correctly. And it's going to be tough to go into BYU and get this one done, because we saw what BYU did to Kansas just a couple of days back when they absolutely ran them out of the gym.
Yeah, like Richie Saunders, he's been unbelievable lately. I think he's averaging over like 22 in his past 3 games or something like that. He had like, I think, what was it, 26 or 28 last night or the night before. It was last night, I think. And he had 6 threes. I don't remember who it was against. Oh, it was against Arizona State. It was last night. I guess BYU team, they're starting to hit their stride at the perfect time. The Kevin Young era, it's looking really good so far. I mean, you got AJ DeBansa coming in next year, and then right now you got a top 25 team with a first-year coach. So I think this program's starting to turn around for the better, and like they've had some really good wins this season at Arizona. Blown out Kansas is still a good win because Kansas still has a lot of talent. They beat West Virginia on the road, and it's hard to win in Mountaineer Nation. They beat Baylor, but I mean, I don't know if I'd count that as a good win. But yeah, this BYU team, they're starting to hit their strides at the perfect time. West Virginia has been a really hard team to keep track of. Javon Small, this team goes as far as Javon Small does. He's their best player, one of the best players in the Big 12. He's unbelievably talented. So I do think BYU wins this by like probably 8+. Probably is going to shatter West Virginia's like bubble hopes potentially, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, you kind of nailed exactly what I'm thinking. I don't expect West Virginia to get this one done. I think BYU is going to defend their home court. West Virginia, I'm trying to pull it up real quick just to get a definite answer on where they stand in the bracketology. I believe it was the last four buys. I'm going to double check. Yeah, they're the last four buys with Lenardi right now. So this one, it may not be detrimental to their bubble hopes,
Oh
but I mean,
yeah, it's not detrimental.
if
I
you want
screwed
more
up there,
room,
but it's not.
yeah, if you want more room for comfort, this is a game that
Yeah,
you want to
yeah,
try and get.
that's more
But
like it.
they also do have Utah and UCF to round out the regular season, so those are also get right opportunities. And I mean, they've got a decent resume built up. They got wins against Cincinnati. They kept it close with Houston for a little bit. He ultimately pulled away. They got the win against Iowa State. That's going to be a big one for them. They got the win against Kansas. That'll be a big one for them as well. Beat Arizona back in a neutral court in November. Got the win against Gonzaga. So there's some quality to this resume. There's also puzzling losses, though, as well. They've lost
Yeah,
to TCU, and that's just kind of been the story of this season. It's been a roller coaster. You don't know which version of them you're going to get. Just tough to get a read on them. But as of right now, Lenardi thinks they're safe on the last four buys. You can really stamp your name into the tournament conversation if you get it done here, but I don't think they're going to get it done because BYU, they're playing about as good as anybody right now. They found their way into
yeah,
the top 25 again. Richie Saunders, Igor Dimon, all those dudes, they've just been hooping lately, and I think they're going to get another one done here. But before we get out of here, Blake, let's shift our attention to the bubble. This is a subject that can't be ignored this time of year. We're getting closer and closer to Selection Sunday every day, and teams are going to be fighting for their lives every weekend. And we got a lot of really important games right now. The last Lenardi bracketology update came yesterday morning, so I'm going by the standings as of yesterday for all these teams. UNC, they got a game against Miami at home. They're in the first four out right now. That's a big one for them. Villanova's hosting Butler. Villanova sits on the next four out as of now. Arkansas, they could punch their ticket to the tournament this weekend, to be honest with you, with this South Carolina game. But if they lose this one, that could also be really, really hurtful to their hopes. They sit on the last four in right now. Nebraska's one of the last four byes. They're hosting Minnesota in a game they really need to get. Oklahoma, they were on the last four byes before the Kentucky game yesterday. I don't know how much that loss changed it, but they're going to Ole Miss this weekend. Another chance there. Creighton, they're going to Xavier on the next four out. Wake Forest, they're hosting Notre Dame as one of the last four in as of today. Indiana traveling to Washington as part of the first four out. And then Georgia versus Texas. That's going to be a big one for the bubble. That's two bubble teams going right at it, the last four in and first four out. But Blake, out of all these matchups, we won't dig into every single one of them. But which one of these do you think is maybe the most important for a team to swing their tournament hopes one way or another? Or which one of these just stands out as the most entertaining one that you're going to have your eyes on?
In terms of like turning hopes, I do think UNC defending or going against Miami, that has to be a big game for them. They've been trending upward in their past like 4 or 5 games. They beat Syracuse on the road, blew out NC State, blew out Virginia, and blew out Florida State. So weak teams, yes, but it's really the hand they've been dealt with in the ACC this year. And then like you got to look forward a little down the road to that Duke game that they have to top off the season. So you got to win this game against Miami. It's a must win. I don't even know if this game's close, and you better be praying to God Hubert Davis, because this Miami team stinks. And then another game that I do think is going to be really, really good and fascinating is that Georgia Texas game. Like, these are two teams that are fighting right now for either a bye or just a spot in the tournament. Texas in the last bracketology by Lenardi, he's got Texas as like last four bye, and then Georgia's next four out. So they still got some work to do. Don't know if they'll make it, but I mean, if they beat Texas here, it very well could change momentum for them. And then lastly, I do think that Indiana game has to be a must-win. They're sitting right at the cusp of first four out. They're right behind North Carolina in the first four out. So it's definitely a big game, even though Washington isn't a great team, but it's still a road environment. It's still a West Coast team that's going to be a lot of travel. So we'll see how they respond in a game like that. And this IU team, like, they've been on fire lately. Like, guys are actually starting to show emotion. I feel like Mike Woodson announcing that he's going to be stepping down mid-season honestly worked out in the best of ways so far. Sad for Mike Woodson, obviously, but I feel like he's felt more comfortable with this team lately. Let them go to work, really do their thing, and it's starting to show because Miles Rice, Umar Ballo, Trey Galloway, Luke Good, guys like that are starting to show up and stand out, really. And this is going to be a big game, I feel like, if they want to keep their hopes alive for the tournament.
I'll tell you the one that I have my eyes on the most. Oklahoma going to Ole Miss. That's a big opportunity for Oklahoma.
Cinema.
They got to rebound quick off that heartbreaker against Kentucky, because this time of year, when you're sitting on the bubble, you can't let one loss turn into two, because that could be it for your season. And I think that Ole Miss is really vulnerable right now. So this is a good spot. I wish it was at Oklahoma for their sake of not having to travel. But they've got all the pieces to go down there and compete. I mean, Jeremiah Fears, he had a really good game against Kentucky. Couldn't get it done, but he had a solid performance. Jalen Moore, he looked really good as well. Bryson Godin, they played their hearts out against Kentucky. I mean, they shot the ball extremely well. 40% from three on the game and held Kentucky to 30% from three, but Otega Owe, he just wasn't going to let Kentucky lose that game, and they found a way to get it done. But this is a really important one for Oklahoma. I think that if you get this one, you kind of buy yourself a little bit more comfort on that bubble line and maybe think you're in a better standing. Now, they still got to finish the season strong. They're going to have a game against Missouri coming up, and then they're going to travel to Texas. Texas, they can't afford to lose that game because
No.
Texas is also on the bubble fighting for their life, so they got to find a way to pull that one out. I will also be very intrigued to see Arkansas. They're traveling to South Carolina. I think they could punch their ticket to the dance with a win there. But if they lose, then that could set you back a little bit more. And I don't know what Adu Thiero's status is as of recently. I know that he missed last night. Don't know if there's been any updates on it, but that
I
could
know
be important.
he had a hyperextension, I think, in his left knee is what I saw last night. But they don't have a timetable yet, and it said surgery is not required, but he's going to continue to be evaluated. Per Arkansas's Twitter.
Yeah, that's not a good sign for Arkansas. They really need to do Thiero, but they came through last night against Texas without him, so obviously they still have enough to get some stuff done. And South Carolina, they're the worst team in the league, but you got to be careful because if you let Colin Murray Boyles get hot and you let that home crowd get into it, then you could find yourself in a bad spot that you don't want to be in. And all the pressure's on them in this situation. I mean, let's be blunt here. South Carolina's not playing for the tournament. They're just trying to get to the end of the season at this point. And I mean, why not try and take away another team's tournament of hopes while you're at it? It's really a all or nothing game for Cal and Arkansas, and South Carolina really can just play freely. Another one too, when I look at this, Wake Forest playing Notre Dame. They're currently on the last four in. You got to get that one done here. And UNC, like you mentioned, if they don't win that one, I mean, sheesh, because Miami is terrible, and there's no excuse for them to not take care of business there.
They're horrible.
Xavier's got a big opportunity, too. They have Creighton at home. That's going to be a big one for them. They could improve their status on the bubble line if they find a way to get that one done. They're on the next four out right now, but it's going to be a big weekend for the bubble, a really big weekend for this one and the next one, really, because the regular season's coming to a close, and the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee, I don't think they really value conference tournaments a ton when it comes to seeding teams and deciding who's in or not. So it's do or die time for some of these teams, Blake.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to get really hectic, really soon.
Yeah, and the bubble debates will wage on. We'll see who ends up ultimately finding their way into the big dance. It's going to be interesting, and we'll be covering it the whole way. But, Blake, we got a big weekend ahead of us. A lot of stuff to look forward to. I'm super pumped to be at that Kentucky-Auburn game. That's going to be a great one. Great weekends of college hoops, really, from here all the way to the end of April when we get to the Final Four in San Antonio. I can't wait to go on this journey and see what is in store the rest of the way. We are officially about 24 hours away from March, and we won't be sleeping till May on the Full Court Trap podcast. Yeah. But for now, we're signing out. We'll see y'all on Sunday when this weekend concludes. Luke and Blake with the Full Court Trap Pub. We'll talk to y'all later.